We're Group 2 and we did a reef analysis for the Access project. The whole group is here to my left with the exception of Civl, who's back in the audience and should be helping me out with the time cues. To walk you through what we're going to be talking about, we're going to give you a bit of a history of sort of what green looks like in the housing industry, walk you through really what our main comparator is, which is LEED. While LEED isn't what the Access project is working with, it's really, really critical in understanding how REAP is different, because REAP is based off of LEED, a different certification method, and it almost arose out of a need to separate itself from LEED. From there, we'll talk about some of the alternatives that were introduced, as well as then go into detail about what actually REAP is, and what the system that we're operating in is. Then we're going to understand that entire process of that certification system through the test case, which is our Concert Access project, do a little cross-comparison, and then wrap up. Unfortunately, unlike the previous group, we're not in a position where we've watched the entire process unravel. Obviously, the building isn't yet certified, so we can't really comment as to exactly exactly if what Concert is doing has worked, but we can let you know where we think it will be. So to start out is really the rise of green. What we see now, and through a number of studies, is that just about every building being built in residential housing has some aspect of sustainability. They'll vary on the level they'll shoot for, but it's extremely rare to have any that are lacking any form of a sustainability advertising. These are much, much more prevalently advertised in anything that's for purchase. The buyers do want to make sure that what they're buying is in some way sustainable, green, or aligned with some certification principle. Whereas in rental, it's a little less important. Usually the renters are looking for somewhere to live, and they're a little less concerned about making sure that the dishwasher is water efficient. However, in that rental group, there is a lot of benefit towards looking to sustainability because it reduces operating costs in the longer term. And so rental buildings, especially those that are owned by the company that built them, such as many that Concert does, do have a large benefit towards looking to sustainability, which really, again, sort of push it towards this rise of green that we've seen. The beast called LEED is really what came about as sort of the de facto standard. It started back in 1998, and has risen and grown by quite a large margin. We've got about 7,000 projects currently LEED certified in about 30 different countries. So it's a very, very large system, and I really want to emphasize this. It started out as one of the first of its kind as sort of major certifying organizations, but it then grew rapidly, and there may be some issues in that, how it's grown and how it's adapted. So we believe, and I believe also Concert believes, that the LEED system isn't exactly perfect and has a number of issues. And I'd actually say that given the amount of documentation and the plethora of papers also claiming the same thing, I'd say it's a fairly commonly held opinion that LEED isn't quite working. Some of the main points where it isn't working, some of the main criticisms it's been getting, are around its point-based system, but more specifically that all of its points are equivalent. There's a point equivalency across a lot of it, which really encourages people to point chase, as opposed to going to things that are actually more meaningful towards the project, towards the sustainability goals that you're pushing. They look for the easy fruit, pick them all off, and then get some form of certification from there. It's also non-regional specific. And this is really critical to think about when you look at different regions that may be very, very water constrained. So if you're building something in Las Vegas, water is probably going to be a more important issue than if you're building it somewhere where it's a lot more lush. It's a very, very lengthy certification process. That's irritated a lot of developers in the past. And it's purely design and construction based. It looks at how did you design and build the building, not how are you running it, not is it working or is it performing, sort of post-occupancy, in sort of more of an audit process. The last point that a lot of people get very, very fed up with is that LEED is very prescriptive. It's not easy to change within LEED. Exceptions aren't common. They can be done in some cases, but it's very much so. It tells you what you should be doing in all cases and assumes that it is correct. While that may be correct in a number of cases, I don't think it's correct in all. Because of these frustrations, we've seen a rise in alternate certification programs. You've got things like Built Green, things like Green Globe, different programs that will rate it in different ways. Here at UBC, we developed a new program. It was created in 2005 called REAP, which is only UBC Vancouver specific. It governs construction here, and it's mandatory on campus for low and high-rise buildings in the class 12. How it breaks it down is it takes the sustainability goals and puts them in 7 different performance categories, all listed up here. Each of these have, in their own way, a different set of targets or actions with points assigned. The points are all assigned at different levels. They range in terms of the benefit or the difficulty of achieving some of these items. And then these will push you towards different certification levels. They start in the low end at compliance, and they work all the way up to platinum, than the level of points you can achieve through REAP. Now to move sort of over into the test case, we're not going to spend a ton of time explaining to you what this concert access project is, because all of you have also spent a term looking at it. But what we should know is that concert properties does have a bit of a reputation for sustainable development, and that the access project is positioned from a sustainable marketing perspective, along with a sort of a 25,000 square foot green space contribution, and pushing for a REAP gold level. To go through sort of how they're going about this is just a little bit of a display of some of the different breakdowns of a REAP. There's a fair amount of different options and categories that you can pursue, and what this is actually displaying is the checklist that Concert use when sort of going and deciding what they're chasing, what they're not, and how they're going to go about doing that. This becomes really, really critical as they work towards how they're going to choose and implement their REAP guidelines, or what REAP sections they're chasing. Because realistically, that's where a lot of REAP breaks down, is figuring out how are people working within the system, and how are they approaching the certification system. One of the very, very neat things that happened with the Concert Access project is that when they approached sort of a sustainable certification, they're already doing a lot of things just for reducing the operating costs that count for points. So they're already collecting a lot of points just off of things they already want to do anyways. So when you sort of take all those and you compare them against the metrics, you can do a bit of a gap analysis and figure out sort of where do you need to focus a little more for this specific project on. And that, through talking with them, was around the water and energy use parts. That's where you sort of needed to upgrade a little bit to get to this REAP gold level. The other big thing that we heard is that there's a strong desire to focus on marketable categories. While REAP does have a cost, if you can sell that cost to the consumers and to the people who are renting or buying, then you can sort of receive a benefit from it, so it's not a wasted cost in the certification. An example of this could be something like a kill switch, which is being implemented in the properties, where on your way out you can sort of hit that switch and it'll kill all the different lights in the apartment. This is great from a sustainability perspective because it's an easy way to make sure everything's off, but it's also very convenient for someone who's living there. It's a huge benefit, and so that's something that is actually kind of marketable. So that's one of the great things to chase. What you can see sort of by that top corner of their spreadsheet is that they've got a yes, question mark, and no system to figure out exactly what are they chasing, what might they go for, and what's sort of off the table that we're not going to really look at. The numbers that are then allocated there are the number of credits assigned to it, which is an easy way to sort of mentally keep track of how big this line we're chasing is. In terms of the implementation and delivery, there's a very interesting, and I think ingenious method that they've done this, which is really farm it all out to other people's responsibilities, and act as sort of a central monitor and control. So along every single one of those lines where they're chasing something, they've decided who's in charge of delivering it, and really who's important. And so in the top line case, the landscape architect and civil contractor are both very important in delivering this, so it's sort of their responsibility to do it. They also had a lot of open dialogues with the REAP certifiers. This is great because since REAP is so slow, or so small rather, they can offer more exceptions or changes within their system to sort of accommodate the developers and really work towards a sustainable building overall. Some examples of where this may come in is that if, let's say your washing machine is a little bit under in terms of the water target that you're shooting for, but your dishwasher is monstrously over, it probably makes sense to give points for both because on a total water perspective, you're saving water. The cost that I've listed up here isn't necessarily the cost that Concert has seen. This is the average cost that the REAP office believes it takes to sort of certify a building across this. And so that's just sort of the rough cost you're looking at when you're doing that. In the reviews and talking to them, we heard that it's a balanced, fair system, and that there isn't really a hesitation to do REAP again. In our interviews, we heard that REAP is better than LEED, and it's almost a shame that it's only offered at UBC. When you stack these two up against each other, what you can see is that REAP performs very, very strongly on sort of reducing paperwork. It has a much shorter time of certification. It's regionally specific, and it's very flexible. Both of these categories still fail on only focusing on the design and build side of the sustainability initiative, and so that they don't have an operations focus. Part of the reason that REAP may be so effective, though, is because it's such a smaller scale. You've got about 5 projects next to 7,000. So if you were to scale up REAP, you're likely going to encounter a lot of the same issues that LEED is having, because those likely come from trying to standardize and become a much larger certification network. That being said, as is, REAP is looking to be a very, very strong alternative on UBC campus, and it has a number of the large advantages over LEED. So because of that, we think the Concert's choice to go with that, or rather UBC's choice to push all developers to go with that, was a very good one, and it makes for, I believe, more amicable relationships between the developers and UBC.